Hello, welcome to the program. I'm your host, Ron Whitlock. When the next hurricane strikes the Rio Grande River Delta of South Texas and northern Mexico, where over 3 million people live and work every day to keep the United States and Mexican economy strong, the IBWC levees that are supposed to contain the floodwaters of the Rio Grande River are expected to fail. The United States Army Corps of Engineers says that the Rio Grande and its floodway levees are seriously defective and they need restoration. However, Hidalgo County, Texas has chosen to pass a $100 million bond issue to proactively try and help the federal government meet its flood protection and flood control responsibilities. Our guests on the program today, Godfrey Garza, the county's flood control manager, and Dr. Joe Coulter, who resides in Brownsville, Texas, downstream. The Mississippi River, levees breaking, flooding, 3 million acres of corn being lost, devastation. The Rio Grande obviously has the same kind of criteria, same possibilities of levees breaking. You're a Brownsville native. You're in charge of the levees in Hidalgo County. If Hidalgo County levees fail, as they did during Beulah, it will devastate Brownsville. Harlingen has happened during Beulah when the Hidalgo County levees fail. Are you all concerned after watching all of the devastation along the flood-ravaged Mississippi, what we're facing along the Rio Grande?
Well, ever since Beulah, that was a wake-up call for me. The devastation that you see along the Mississippi is just it's critical, and it's going to affect the economy of the country, in fact. And given that same set of circumstances on the Rio Grande, if the flooding occurred here in the dimension that we had in Beulah, the flooding in Mexico would have an impact on us economically as well as on this side, because when Beulah occurred, there was no maquiladores, there was no industrial development over there to speak of, and in fact, Mexico cut the levee up above Matamoros to save Brownsville and Matamoros. Well, if they were to have to do that now, it would put the maquiladora industry, from about Progreso down to Matamoros in dire straits. It would be terrible.
What do you think as you see levee problems on the Rio Grande and El Paso, Del Rio, Eagle Pass over the last few years, and now watching the ravaging Mississippi levees break? What should the residents of the entire stretch of the Rio Grande be doing to try and make sure that they're ready ahead of the time when those levees are judged and required to hold, as opposed to what they're doing right now? And what are you doing in your county?
Well, basically what Hidalgo County has done is gone into memorandums of understanding with the International Boundary and Water Commission. We're fortunate in our area, not similar to what the Mississippi is, that the levees along the Mississippi are managed or controlled by the Army Corps of Engineers. The levees along the river are controlled by the International Boundary and Water Commission with its dual partner in Mexico. So it's a completely different federal agency or responsibility. Hidalgo County has gone on board to try to get its levees repaired. As you're aware, there isn't a single levee in Hidalgo County that is certified. And by that means that the IBWC cannot guarantee the structural integrity of the levee systems if it were to get the amount of rainfall or water flows in the river that it is designed to carry. So what we've done is gone forward and started working on different segments of the levee through our agreement with IBWC and through our agreement with DHS, which is repairing segments of the levee. But this is just the beginning of it. You know, the segments and the areas that we're working on the levees is just a small area compared to what's needed done in Hidalgo County. It's a substantial amount, but it's not a complete answer. And as you're seeing happening up on the Mississippi, and as you mentioned upstream from our area over here, they need to be done. You know, we've got a major impact in the economy of this country of what's going on through Hidalgo County and Cameron County. As Mr. was saying, the maquila industry, the Fortune 500s, we get a major flood down in our area, not just the loss of lives, but the economic impact it will have in this nation from all of the maquila industry that feeds the industries up north.
Because those sole source parts produced in these maquilas on the other side of the Rio Grande will not arrive just in time for that car line to continue operating in Detroit, and they're going to shut down.
And not just not arrive, how can you get it back in motion if you lose part of your infrastructure, your roadways, your bridges? The plants might be operational, but how are you going to get your product up north? It has to go through our communities, Cameron County and Hidalgo County, or start going west and going up to Laredo. But it's important that I think our community understand that these levees need to be fixed by whatever means that we've got. We've got a trip planned up to Washington in about another 2 weeks. We've got discussions going on with Commissioner Marin to try to establish a plan of how these levees are going to be repaired. We know they need repairing, but how are we going to get the financial resource to get it done?
Now, your county has passed a $100 million bond election. You're spending money in concert with the federal government and try and get your levees up to par where they need to be based on the Army Corps of Engineers. And that's going to be a situation in some cases where you're putting out local taxpayer dollars, and then hopefully the federal government in some cases will reimburse you because the levees in the main are a federal responsibility.
And that is correct. And we're putting our local taxpayers dollar out there to protect the lives and the growth that's going on in Hidalgo County. And again, we're hoping that by showing the federal government that the locals are willing to come to the table to assist, not that we should take the burden, but to assist the federal government while we're going through times of financial crisis because of the war and other issues that are going on, to get our citizens out of harm's way. I think it's important that everybody come to the table. This is not going to be something going to be done by Hidalgo County by itself, by the International Boundary and Water Commission by itself, but it's going to take a joint effort from everybody to get the funding done and get it done in a timely manner. As you've seen and you've read in the paper, the levees from New Orleans, they've been asking money from the federal government for years. What happened over on the Mississippi? Some of those levees were just repaired 8 years ago and they failed again. You know, those are critical components of how are we going to address the problem that we have down here. And it is a federal problem. It's not being handled by the Corps. It's being handled by the International Boundary and Water Commission. And we need to find the funding. We need to assess them in expediting this thing. And we need to have an open dialogue between the International Boundary and Water Commission and entities like Hidalgo County Drainage System Number 1 to see how we can work or use our efforts or resources to get this done in a timely manner. It doesn't matter if they come down here and give the IBWC $100 million to fix the levees, but if the bureaucratic process delays it 10 years to get it done, that's not going to solve our problem. You know, we've been able to get plans and put out for construction for over probably 40 miles of levee systems in Hidalgo County in less than a year.
The flood control system, as it was designed and as it functioned with Beulah, which it didn't function very well because Harlingen flooded, McAllen flooded, and almost Brownsville and Matamoros. But because the nature of the land use from the levee to the river all the way down has changed. It used to be open farmland. Now it's grown up in native brush. So that water comes down and it's like a funnel. It gets narrower and narrower, the river does, or the carrying capacity of the river. So that means it's going to push it back into Hidalgo County.
Pool upward, upstream.
Yeah, it's always going to do that. So that's another problem that Hidalgo County has to be addressed. The thing is that, like Godfrey said, the IBWC won't certify the levy, so what are the insurance companies doing?
And that's part of the critical component.
Jacking up their rates.
If we don't have our systems operational and certified, and again, I mentioned we're under construction, we have to turn all this documentation over to the International Boundary and Water Commission. They have to issue the certification to FEMA. Without their certification, we're not going to get the maps that are committed to us. So IBWC has to be hand in hand, as we're doing right now, on reviewing the plans, getting the permits, getting the construction documents. So when this is all said and done and we turn it over to them, they're going to issue that certification. We can't issue that certification. We're doing the responsibility of the federal government, which is to reconstruct the levees. And we hope that the federal government sees that we need our money back. That's our local taxpayer money. And it's not that it's different than local taxpayer money, because the money we get from the feds is still our local taxpayer money. But we're taking the initiative here in Hidalgo County to put money out there to try to help as much of the area as we can in Hidalgo County.
Joe, you're good for an answer always. You've got a one agency, the Army Corps, saying the levees are dangerously deficient. You've got the IBWC saying that they can't certify those levees for obvious reasons because of that other federal agency's directive and study. Then you've got the Homeland Security Department, who is sitting there. They're going to have to come in a time of a devastating flood and take over an area that may have $40 billion of losses if those levees are not maintained. And in the meantime, you've got the insurance rates going up because they know, they being the insurance company, that those decertifications documents are coming down the pike. So they're making their decisions already. So the citizens are in a catch-22. Their insurance rates are going up, and all these federal agencies are doing what? They're passing the buck around and passing the potato around. How does that work? What's your answer?
Not very well. That's my best answer.
What do the citizens upstream do? They have the same situation that your region has.
Well, it's the old story of the squeaky wheel. You just got to keep talking. You just got to keep pounding the desk. You got to keep walking the halls and talking to people that make decisions.
Is that the senators? Is that being Hutchison
and the congressmen all across the board? And I think I'm satisfied at least that our county officers, the commissioners and county judges in Hidalgo and Cameron County are giving it their best shot. They're doing all they can do.
Right.
And so I admire them for that and compliment them for their work. But it's going to take the Valley Partnership, all
other stakeholders,
all kinds of people who have stakeholders have to come to the table and say, let's
what pressure could you gentlemen, or should you gentlemen, be putting on the new manager of the Mercedes office of IBWC to try and get these areas cleaned out, like you're talking about, to keep this pooling from happening, to whatever flood waters were to come, get that water to the Gulf of Mexico?
Well, that's going to take some negotiation between IBWC and Fish and Wildlife because much of that land belongs is in conservation status. In other words, it's been purchased and it's no longer used as farmland. It's just growing up in native brush. And
in order to protect and provide wildlife habitat.
Yeah, right. That's what it is. And there's been many plans presented that are reasonable and sensible. That if you cut swaths through there, it provides a place for grass to grow, which provides food for certain kinds of herbivores that live there, and it would let the water move. But that's something IBWC and Fish and Wildlife are going to have to work out. I think there's good faith on both sides, but it hadn't happened yet.
I think we're tired of studies. We're tired of spending millions of dollars studying, coming up with the same solution of get the levees fixed. Let's get the money to get the levees fixed and not go back and trying to reinvent the wheel and do more studies and do more studies. It is obvious that we have a serious problem. It's been documented since Beulah to today. Everything that's happened in the valley is just growth, and we need the money to fix the levees today. Not to be studying it anymore, but to fix the levees.
Should Katrina and the Mississippi levee problems and failures be a wake-up call to the federal government, Joe?
Well, certainly. And we don't know the extent of the Mississippi flood now. We still don't, the final details are not in on that one. How much it's going to cost, how much property and human life are going to be destroyed. That's still out there. We don't know that yet. It seems that it has to happen before they listen. Is that? That's terrible.
And I agree. And again, I don't think we're looking for a reactive government. We need a proactive government.
That's right.
Because reacting after the fact, your people might not come back.
It doesn't bring back a farmland or people and
or life or
life.
A business.
It's too late.
The mayor of St. Louis said that after a flooding situation the last time, West St. Louis, 50% of the businesses closed and never came back, never reopened. So their business community was cut in half by one flooding situation that have never returned in a decade.
I think that's where we're at. We need the money to fix our problem.
The man who heads the International Boundary and Water Commission U.S. section that's responsible for maintaining the Rio Grande River's levees that are to protect the lives, jobs, and homes of the millions who live near its banks is Commissioner Carlos Marin of El Paso. He was appointed by Republican President George W. Bush. He's joined now by former IBWC area manager Joe Tucker of Harlingen, Texas. Fellas, watching television with all those levees breaking along the Mississippi reminds Texans that the Rio Grande is a treacherous place also. El Paso, where your headquarters is, major problems on the Rio Grande flooding. El Rio, Eagle Pass, now the valley in the hurricane cycle. What should constituents and residents and business people all up and down the Rio Grande be thinking as they see the Mississippi going out of its banks and the levees breaking?
Let me just say, on behalf of the IBWC, again, we're trying to take every action possible to, of course, prevent that. In our levee rehab, we're doing the geotechnical work to make sure that we don't have weak spots. And that's where, the levee breaks occur, where there's maybe a pocket of sand or silt as a core of that levee and so forth. So we're doing the necessary geotechnical work to do that. And at the same time, we're raising the levees to the proper elevation that we can, let's say, hydraulically determine it's a 100-year flood. Of course, this is a 100-year flood. If we get anything greater than that, then we have a different situation. But we still have 3 feet of freeboard. That's the requirement that we put in on our construction. We have a 100-year flood plus 3 feet of freeboard. So in other words, we can take additional flows that might be generated. But of course, again, it's Mother Nature who dictates what else is coming down the system or how much water is deposited, and that may change, and it might not be sufficient to protect. Okay, so but again, I think some of the levee failure this morning that I saw on TV was basically a weak spot that the levee started deteriorating at that point, and it opened up a hole in the levee itself. I think for the most part it was working okay, but that one spot, makes a difference. And so that's what we're trying to look at and prevent, that make sure we don't have any weak spots in the levee itself.
Commissioner Joe, what can the residents of this region do, because the levees have been decertified by the study of the Army Corps in one instance, and then FEMA is looking at potential decertification, or maybe they've already decertified. Now, the insurance companies are already raising insurance rates because of that. Mm-hmm. So those residents are in catch-22. Who can solve that particular catch-22 problem and get those businesses out of that lurch? And Joe, is that you? Is that Senator Hutchison or Senator Cornyn or the President of the United States?
Well, it's our responsibility, the agency's responsibility. Of course, I think it's more Congress's issue of getting us the funding in order to do it. We can do it. We can take care. We can meet the requirements for FEMA certifications. But if we don't have the funding, we can't do anything.
You're saying unless the funding comes and the levies are raised to the proper level, then decertification is mandatory? Is going to happen?
Yes. Unless that happens, yes.
So if the levees are not repaired and be able to handle floods based on certain parameters hydrologists are going to tell you about, then decertification is going to happen.
Yes. Yes.
That sounds like pretty bad news, doesn't it, Joe?
Well, it is. The floodway system got to be in a deplorable state for our carrying capacity. After the Beulah flood in '67, we had 220,000 coming down. We were designed for 187,000 cubic feet per second flow. It was redesigned for 250,000 cubic feet per second and rebuilt to handle that. Then we had a long period with no major floods. The river channel carrying capacity decreased, brush encroached into it. The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Corridor came about. So the overall capacity of the river floodway system was greatly decreased, where the levees were several feet too low in many places, especially in the Hidalgo area. And Hidalgo County now is helping the Boundary Commission raise the levy, because the Boundary Commission has not had the funds to do anything. They've had little piddly amounts. I thought sure after the disaster at New Orleans for Hurricane Katrina that money would be forthcoming to correct the deficiency of the flood control system. But our politicians, I think, are more interested in politics and their own future than they are in the welfare of the country.
Now, you were at the press conference where the Secretary of Homeland Security came and talked about the project in Hidalgo County of having the levees being repaired, and then they also, Homeland Security, trying to put fencing on top of that, or a component of that levee improvement project. Now, you canceled one of those projects, and some of those funds were taken back by your agency, I assume. Are those funds going to be restored back into those other projects that are now being let in Hidalgo County?
Well, one of the things we have to look at is, again, that money, the money that I get for the Rio Grande, we got $10 million in 2008 and $11.7 million for the New Mexico levees. And I've always mentioned that the money that we get for the Rio Grande is for the Rio Grande from El Paso to Brownsville. And so one of the things we had put in that reach that we had contracted as our number one priority. If you look through history, we've always identified that reach as the number one. So we did the engineering, we did the contracting. We were at the point of awarding the contract, and of course, working with Hidalgo County and Homeland Security, they requested that we cancel it, so we did. The money that is there.
So the first cancellation of the first contract, which was let, which was approved, which was received and accepted, that cancellation directive came from Homeland Security, was not out of your
Well,
office.
they made a request. They didn't say.
Being Homeland Security.
Yes, I mean they didn't say do it or you have to do it. They asked us if we would cooperate with them because again, it's that whole area is one of the areas that has the wall section in it. So we said, okay, we'll cancel our contract. The wall and levee fence combination can be done. Ours was only levee raising. It wasn't anything else. And so the money that we have, let's say, left over from there, well, we need to obligate it for this year. And the thing is, we might have to move some of it to different areas of the border. So,
Okay.
And I'm not saying all of it. I'm not saying how much right now. I think we're strategizing as to where we need to use it, but we need to use it in order, because if we don't use it, then Congress's attitude is, well, if you didn't use it, why do you want more?
Absolutely. So they're going to take that money back.
Well, they won't take it back because it's construction money, but they won't give us any more.
Right.
That's what the problem
That's
is.
just how it works, isn't it?
That's how it works with Congress.
So as the Hidalgo County officials go to Washington in a couple of weeks, they're doing the right thing and going up there to try and protect those funds if they can and get them back involved in the project that they're particularly concerned about?
Well, yes. I mean, it's all that money's for that reason, for levies. So that's what we got it dedicated for.
And also, in addition to that, they'll be twisting your arm to try to make sure that as you put it back in, it comes back to that project.
That's right.
Thank you, Commissioner, for appearing. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you.
Thank you so much. Controlling floodwaters along the Rio Grande River is a federal responsibility, but the United States Congress has only approved $10 million to protect a region that keeps Detroit automotive plants open and where 70% of the trade Mexico does with the United States of America crosses international bridges every day. What should you do? Well, we suggest you let your congressman, your senator, and your president know that $10 million to protect the economy of the United States and Mexico is not acceptable. Till next time, adios.